Laundry by 5. Dinner at 7. 12 people. And please don't dry out the roast this time. My daughter-in-law said it without looking up from her phone. She was standing in my kitchen, wearing a cream-colored coat that cost more than the first pickup truck I ever owned, while snow melted from her boots onto the oak floor my wife and I had refinished by hand. She had a leather folder tucked beneath one arm, and the expression of a woman correcting an employee who had disappointed her before. For a second, I thought I had misunderstood. I was 70 years old. I had spent 46 of those years climbing ladders, replacing boilers, balancing ledgers, and keeping an 8-unit apartment building alive through Minnesota winters that could split cast iron. The kitchen belonged to me. The roast was mine. The washer and dryer in the basement were mine. For that matter, the apartment upstairs where Marissa, my son Evan, and their boy Noah had been living rent-free for 9 months was mine too. Marissa tapped the leather folder against the counter. "The sheets are already downstairs," she said. "White load, hot water. Fold them neatly, because they're for tonight." "Whose sheets?" I asked. That made her look at me. "Does it matter?" It mattered. I just did not yet understand how much. My name is Walter Hayes. At the time this happened, I lived in apartment 1A of Linden Court, a 4-story brick building on a quiet street in St. Paul. The place had 8 apartments, a narrow courtyard, and stone lions by the front steps that generations of neighborhood children had dressed in scarves every December. I had bought the building with my wife, June, in 1987, when the mortar was crumbling and 3 of the bathrooms still had clawfoot tubs with separate taps. June saw a home where I saw invoices. She remembered birthdays, carried soup upstairs when tenants were sick, and insisted we plant lilacs along the alley, even though I told her the roots would eventually give me trouble. She was right about the home. I was right about the roots. For 34 years, that was how our marriage worked. She had been gone for 4 winters. Evan was our only child. He was 43, clever with numbers, persuasive in a room, and always a little impatient with anything that could not be improved by a spreadsheet. He had worked in commercial development, then lost his job when a boutique hotel project collapsed under rising interest rates and a partner's lawsuit. Marissa's event styling business had slowed at the same time. Their lease ended, their savings thinned, and Evan called me one Sunday evening with shame in his voice. 90 days, he said, just until I land somewhere. Apartment 3A had become vacant 2 weeks earlier. It had 2 bedrooms, tall windows, and a view of the cathedral dome in winter. Market rent would have been around $1,850 a month. I gave them the keys and told them to pay only their own electric bill. "Family doesn't charge family when they're drowning," I said. June used to warn me that rescue and love were not the same thing. At the time, I thought she was speaking generally. The first month was almost pleasant. Noah, who was 14, came downstairs after school and did homework at my kitchen table. Evan helped me replace a failing circulation pump. Marissa brought coffee from a place that printed leaves in the foam and asked if I wanted help updating the building website. Then small favors began to collect. Could I meet a delivery because Marissa had an appointment? Could I drive Noah to hockey because Evan had a second interview? Could I let the cleaner into 3A? Could I pick up groceries, since I was already going out? None of those requests seemed unreasonable by itself. I was retired. I loved my grandson. I knew what it meant to be frightened about money. By the 4th month, the requests stopped sounding like requests. "We need Noah picked up at 4. Put the dark clothes on delicate. Don't use garlic tonight. I have a meeting in the morning." Marissa began leaving grocery bags outside my door with recipes printed from the internet. Evan would apologize afterward. "She's under pressure, Dad. You know how she gets when she's building something?" I asked what she was building. He said, "A way out of this mess." I should have pressed him then. Instead, I told myself that dignity sometimes meant allowing a person to regain his balance without making him describe every bruise. The Friday Marissa ordered dinner for 12, I had just returned from checking the boiler gauge. Unit 4 had been empty for 6 weeks. Its former tenant, Arthur Kaplan, had moved into assisted living after a fall, and I was repainting it slowly. I had not advertised it yet. There was no hurry. The mortgage on Linden Court had been paid off 11 years earlier, and I preferred finding the right tenant to finding the fastest one. Marissa disliked that attitude. "Vacancy is waste," she had told me. "Vacancy is sometimes breathing room," I said. Now she stood in my kitchen talking about 12 dinner guests as though my Friday belonged to her. "I'm not cooking for your meeting," I said. She blinked. Not angrily at first, more like a person whose smart speaker had refused a basic command. "Walter, I have too much riding on tonight." "Then you should have arranged a caterer." "A caterer makes it look corporate. We need family. We need warmth. You need roast beef." "I need you not to make everything difficult." The words settled between us. Marissa exhaled and softened her voice. She was good at that. She could lay velvet over a blade without hiding its shape. "Evan is trying to create a future for Noah. You said you wanted to help. These people matter. Please don't force Evan to choose between this opportunity and managing your feelings." "My feelings are not what needs managing." She picked up her phone. "Fine. I'll tell him you refused. Tell him exactly what I refused." She walked out, leaving water on my floor and the faint scent of expensive perfume in the room June had painted pale green. I waited until I heard the front door close. Then I went down to the laundry room. Linden Court's basement had low pipes, a painted concrete floor, 2 coinless washers for tenants, and a larger utility sink that had survived since 1948. On the folding table sat a gray plastic tote filled with white sheets, pillowcases, and towels. The linens were too uniform to belong to a family. Each towel had a narrow navy stripe. The sheets were crisp, commercial-grade cotton, and some still held the square creases of packaging. One pillowcase carried a paper laundry tag. North Star Executive Stays. Linden Court. Suite 4A. Turnover. Friday, 3 p.m. I read it twice. Then I climbed 4 flights of stairs. The door to 4A was locked. I used my master key. The apartment I entered was not the one I had left 2 days earlier. My drop cloths were gone. The paint cans had been moved into the hall closet. A charcoal sofa sat against the living room wall beneath a framed photograph of the Minneapolis skyline. There were artificial orchids on the dining table, bottled water in the refrigerator, and a brass tray beside the door holding 3 electronic keycards. The bedroom had a king-sized bed made with the same white linens from the basement. A small placard on the dresser gave Wi-Fi instructions. "Welcome to North Star Executive Stays," it said. I heard a key turn behind me. A man in hospital scrubs entered, carrying a paper grocery bag. He stopped when he saw me. "Can I help you?" he asked. "I was about to ask you the same thing." He looked from me to the open closet. "Are you maintenance?" "I own the building." His face changed. He introduced himself as Paul Mercer, an orthopedic equipment representative from Denver. His company had rented 4A for 6 weeks through North Star Executive Stays. He had checked in 11 days earlier. He showed me the confirmation on his phone. $6,800, paid in advance, including cleaning and parking. The listing described Linden Court as a privately managed heritage residence, with 24-hour on-site service. There was a photograph of me on the listing. I was standing on the front steps holding a snow shovel. The caption read, "Walter, resident host." "Who gave you the key?" I asked. "A woman named Marissa. She said her family owned the property." "Did you sign anything?" "Just the online rental agreement." He hesitated. "Am I not supposed to be here?" Paul did not know. That was clear. He was 40-something, tired around the eyes, and genuinely worried that he had walked into someone else's family dispute. I told him he could stay that night while I sorted matters out. Throwing him into a Minnesota February evening would not correct what Marissa had done. I asked him to email me his confirmation and payment receipt. Then I photographed the apartment, the placard, the key cards, the linen labels, and the contents of the welcome binder. On the last page was an emergency contact list. Property Director, Evan Hayes. Operations, Marissa Hayes. Resident Host, Walter Hayes. My phone rang while I was still looking at my own name. It was Evan. "Dad, where are you?" "In 4A. Silence. Then, "You used your key while a guest was inside?" He did not ask what guest. "Come downstairs," I said. "Dad, listen. There's an explanation." 7 o'clock, my apartment. "We already have people coming." So I heard. I ended the call. Back in 1A, I did something that still embarrasses me when I remember it. I cooked the roast. Not because Marissa had ordered me to. Not because Evan had earned the favor. I cooked because I wanted to see the people coming to my building, and because a dining table can reveal arrangements that remain hidden in an office. June had taught me that. Feed people, she used to say, and eventually they will tell you what they think they own. I seasoned the beef with rosemary and black pepper. I roasted carrots and onions, mashed potatoes, and made June's horseradish cream. I did not touch the North Star linens. At 6:45, Marissa came in wearing a dark green dress. She glanced at the table, saw only 6 place settings, and stared at me. I said 12. Then 6 people will have to stand. This is childish. What is North Star executive stays? All color left her face for perhaps half a second. Then it returned. Evan said he would explain. I asked you. It's a pilot concept. In my apartment. In a vacant unit that was earning nothing. You collected $6,800. Her expression sharpened. That money covers furnishing, cleaning, taxes, platform fees, and business development. You don't understand the margins. I understand that you used my property, my photograph, my utilities, and my name without permission. We were going to tell you after tonight. After what? The buzzer sounded. Marissa looked at me for a long moment, then went to answer it. The first guests were a commercial broker named Glenn Sutter and his wife. Then came a banker, a woman from a design firm, and 2 younger men who spoke in the easy shorthand of people accustomed to presenting large numbers on glass screens. Evan arrived last with a broad-shouldered man in a navy overcoat. Dad, Evan said carefully, this is Graham Voss. Graham, my father, Walter. Voss shook my hand with both of his. He was around 55, silver at the temples, polished without being flashy. The famous Walter Hayes, he said. I've heard a great deal about you. Apparently not from me. He laughed because he thought I was joking. People found chairs. Marissa borrowed 2 folding seats from the utility closet and sent one of the younger men upstairs for more. She tried to regain control of the evening by describing the roast as an old Hayes family tradition. I watched Evan pour wine. Dinner began with ordinary talk about weather, construction costs, and a new medical campus planned for the east side. Then Glenn Sutter praised Linden Court's conversion potential. The banker discussed bridge financing. The design woman showed Marissa photographs on a tablet. I let them speak for 20 minutes. Finally, Voss turned to me. Have you decided where you'll go? He asked. Go? After closing. Evan mentioned Arizona, but Marissa thought you might remain local. The room became quiet in a way that had nothing to do with manners. Voss must have seen something in my face, because his smile faded. I'm sorry, he said. Perhaps I misunderstood the timing. What closing? I asked. Evan put down the wine bottle. Dad, we should discuss this privately. Mr. Voss asked where I plan to live after he buys my building. I think everyone at this table can hear the answer. Marissa gave a small, embarrassed laugh. Walter has been struggling with transitions since June passed. We've tried not to overwhelm him with paperwork. She spoke about me while sitting at my table, eating food I had cooked, in the apartment she expected me to leave. How considerate, I said. What paperwork have you spared me? Voss looked at Evan. Evan rubbed his thumb along the stem of his glass. The purchase option, he said. I never signed a purchase option. No one moved. Marissa opened the leather folder she had carried into my kitchen earlier. She removed a bound document and placed it beside my plate. On the cover were the words, option to purchase real property. Beneath them was Linden Court's address and a price of $4,800,000. I turned to the signature page. My name was there. The signature looked good. Whoever had made it had copied the broad initial stroke of my W, the short cross on the T, and the upward hook at the end of Hayes. A notary seal appeared beneath it. Evan's signature was listed as witness. The date was September 14th. That is not my signature, I said. Voss sat back. Evan's face tightened. You told me the building would be mine someday. Someday is not September 14th. You reviewed the terms. I did not. Dad, we sat in this room. Then tell me what I was wearing. He stared at me. What? September 14th. You say I signed away the building in this room. Tell me what I was wearing. Marissa interrupted. This is exactly what we were afraid of. You don't remember meetings, and then you accuse people of lying. I looked at her. I remember September 14th. The date had been 4 years to the day since June died. Every September 14th, I drove north to the small cemetery outside Duluth where she was buried beside her parents. That year I had taken Ruth Bell from 1B because she wanted to place flowers on her sister's grave in the same cemetery. We left St. Paul before 7 in the morning and did not return until nearly 10 at night. I said none of that yet. Instead, I closed the document. Mr. Voss, did you pay money under this agreement? His jaw moved once before he answered. My company paid a $320,000 option deposit. To whom? Hayes Residential Holdings. There is no such company authorized to act for this building. Voss turned to Evan. You represented that it was the property entity. Evan looked suddenly younger than 43. Dad, no one is stealing from you. The funds are part of the transaction. You get the balance at closing. Where is the deposit? In the company. What company? Marissa pushed her chair back. This has become abusive. We came here to give you financial security and free you from a building you can't manage forever. Instead, you're humiliating Evan in front of partners because you cannot accept that life changes. I looked around the table. Dinner is over. No one argued. Voss took the option document. I placed my hand on it. Leave the copy. My counsel will contact you, he said. Mine will contact you first. The guests gathered coats in near silence. Glenn Sutter avoided my eyes. The banker left her business card beside the untouched horseradish cream. When the door closed behind the last stranger, only Evan, Marissa, and I remained. Evan stood by the window. You had no right to do that, he said. No right to stop the sale of my own building? No right to make me look like a criminal before you even understand the plan. Did you watch me sign that paper? He looked away. We had your authorization. That was not my question. Marissa crossed her arms. You authorized Evan to manage family matters. Did you sign my name? Be very careful what you accuse me of. I am being careful. That is why I asked. Evan turned from the window. Dad, we can fix this if you stop escalating. Voss wants the location. He'll raise the price. You keep a life lease in 1A. No maintenance, no tenant calls, no winter emergencies. You'll have more money than you could spend. And Ruth? What about her? And the Ortegas? Daniel Cho? Marie and 4B? They're tenants, Dad. Leases end. People don't become disposable because a lease has an end date. Marissa made a tired sound. This is why nothing changes. You confuse undercharging with virtue. Half this building could earn double. The top floor could be premium furnished suites. You are sitting on an asset and treating it like a church basement. I thought of the North Star linens downstairs. How many units have you rented? Neither answered. How many? 1, Evan said. Since when? It was a test. Who gave you a key to 4A? His eyes went to Marissa. That told me more than an answer. You have until noon tomorrow, I said. I want every contract, every bank statement, every booking, every key card, and a written accounting of the money. You will not enter another unit. You will not contact a tenant about rent, a lease, or this sale. Marissa smiled then, but there was no warmth in it. Or what? Or I stopped treating this as a family misunderstanding. She picked up her folder. Come on, Evan. He lingered. Dad. Noon. They went upstairs. I cleared the table alone. The roast had cooled. Wine darkened the bottom of 3 glasses. The purchase option lay beside June's blue serving dish, my false signature facing upward. At 10:30, Noah knocked. He wore sweatpants and an old hockey sweatshirt. His hair was damp from a shower, and he looked as if he had spent an hour deciding whether to come downstairs. Can I stay here tonight? He asked. Of course. I made up the sofa. While I found blankets, he stood in the kitchen staring at the dishes. Mom said you ruined everything. Your mother and I disagree about what happened. Did they sell the building? I paused. Why do you ask that? He pulled at a loose thread on his sleeve. Because she told someone on the phone that after closing, we'd move into a house in Edina, and she said you'd calm down once the money was real. When did you hear that? A while ago. Did your father say anything? Noah's eyes filled, which made me wish I had not asked. He said you always need time to catch up. I put a hand on his shoulder. None of this is yours to solve. Are we going to get arrested? You are not. I meant them. I could not promise what I did not know. Tomorrow, I said, I'm going to find out exactly what happened. Your job is to be 14. Sleep. Go to hockey. Tell the truth when an adult asks you a fair question. Nothing more. He nodded. But children know when adults are frightened, no matter how evenly those adults speak. After Noah fell asleep, I took the purchase option, Paul's booking confirmation, and my photographs into the small office off my bedroom. I opened the steel file cabinet where I kept deeds, tax statements, leases, and 40 years of building records. The original deed was there. So was the Hayes Family Preservation Trust Agreement June and I had signed in 2018. The trust held title to Linden Court. I was the current trustee. Evan was a contingent beneficiary, not an owner, not a co-trustee, and not a manager. Any sale required my notarized signature and written notice to existing tenants 90 days before closing. No such notice had been given. I scanned the false option page by page. It referred to an attached schedule of leases that was missing from my copy. It promised the property substantially vacant at closing. It represented that all occupants above the first floor were on month-to-month agreements. That was false too. Daniel Cho had 8 months left. The Ortegas had 10. Marie had just renewed for a year. At 12:17 in the morning, I called Priya Shah and left a message. Priya had handled June's estate. She was 51, precise, and incapable of pretending bad news was smaller than it was. Someone forged my signature on a purchase option for Linden Court, I said into her voicemail. There is also an unauthorized furnished rental in 4A. The buyers say they paid $320,000 to an entity Evan controls. Please call me as soon as you hear this. Then I did what I had done whenever a boiler failed at 2 in the morning. I made a list. Title records, corporate records, bank destination, tenant communications, access logs, insurance, utilities, notary, September 14th. At the bottom, I wrote one more word, Evan. I stared at his name for a long time. The first lie Marissa told me had been that family warmth required me to cook dinner. The worst lie, I was beginning to understand, was the one I had told myself. That my son's silence meant he was merely trapped between us. Priya called at 6:40 the next morning. I had slept for perhaps 2 hours. Noah was still on the sofa, one arm hanging toward the floor. I stepped into the hallway and spoke quietly. Do not confront them again, Priya said after I described the dinner. Do not sign anything. Do not destroy or move anything from 4A. Preserve every message. I'm ordering the county record now. Can an option transfer the building? Not by itself. But a recorded memorandum can cloud title, and a buyer can use it to argue rights under the agreement. The more immediate problem is that someone accepted a large deposit while representing authority over trust property. They are upstairs. Then remain calm. This is still your home, but family plus money plus possible fraud is a dangerous combination. I'll be there at 9. At 7:15, Evan knocked. He held 2 coffees and looked exhausted. I let him in because Noah was asleep 10 feet away and because some stubborn part of me still believed there might be a sentence my son could say that would put the floor back beneath us. He set 1 coffee on the counter. Marissa shouldn't have pushed dinner on you. That was his beginning. Not the signature. Not the deposit. Dinner. Did you sign as witness? I asked. Dad, I want to explain the entire structure. Did you sign as witness? He lowered his voice. Yes. Did you see me sign? You had already agreed. Did you see me put my name on that paper? Not physically. There are answers that leave room for hope. That one closed a door. Who signed my name? I don't know. Marissa sent the final documents to the notary. I thought you handled it with her. On September 14th? Around then. I was in Duluth. He rubbed his forehead. Then maybe the date reflects when the notary completed it. Documents get dated after signatures all the time. Not legally. I'm not a lawyer. Neither am I, and I know a witness should witness something. Noah stirred. Evan glanced toward the sofa and saw his son. Why is he down here? He asked to stay. You involved him? He came to me. Dad, this is what you do. You make yourself the safe, wounded one, and everyone else becomes the problem. I almost raised my voice. The accusation reached backward through years, and I wanted to defend birthdays, hockey games, tuition payments, and all the nights I had shown up. Then I remembered Priya's instruction. Bring the accounting at noon, I said. There is no accounting in the form you want. North Star is a startup. Money moved into setup costs. How much of Voss's deposit remains? He did not answer. How much? About $214,000. You spent more than $100,000 from a deposit on a property you do not own. We invested it to create value for the sale. On what? Furnishings, marketing, professional fees, debt consolidation. Whose debt? His face hardened. Ours. But it was a bridge. When the sale closes, all of it nets out. There will be no closing. He looked at me as if I had slapped him. Then you destroy us. You used money that was never yours. Because I believed you meant what you said. You told me my whole life that Linden Court was for our family. It is. That does not mean you can sell it while I am alive. What am I supposed to inherit? 8 old apartments with capped rents and a roof you keep patching because you refuse to modernize? Noah sat up. Evan saw him and stopped. My grandson looked from his father to me. You said we were just testing one apartment. Go upstairs, Noah. You said Grandpa knew. Now. I stepped between them without thinking. He can stay. Evan's face went pale with anger. Of course he can. Everyone can stay with Grandpa. Grandpa never asks them to grow up. He took his coffee and left. The other cup remained untouched on the counter. Noah stared at the closed door. I'm sorry, he whispered. You have nothing to be sorry for. I knew about 4A. I sat beside him. He said Marissa had made him carry small boxes upstairs in January. Lamps, towels, a coffee machine. She told him they were staging the apartment to help me rent it. Evan installed the electronic lock. Noah had designed the Wi-Fi card because Marissa said it was a school-style design project. Did you know people were paying your parents? Not until a man came when they weren't home. I let him in because he had a code. Mom got mad that I spoke to him. You believed what they told you. So did you. Children sometimes say the cleanest thing in the room. Priya arrived at 9 carrying a laptop, a portable scanner, and enough directness to change the air. Ruth came with her. Ruth Bell was 76, 5 feet 2 inches tall, and still wore her gray hair in the same firm wave she had worn when she worked as an elementary school secretary. She had lived in 1B for 28 years. After June died, Ruth and I developed a habit of checking on each other without naming it as such. She set a bakery box on my table. Cinnamon rolls, she said. Priya said legal emergencies require sugar. Then she saw Noah and hugged him. Priya spread documents beside the cold coffee. The county recorder's online system showed that a memorandum of option had been recorded 3 weeks earlier. It bore my supposed signature and referenced the same September agreement. The grantee was Voss Urban Communities. The return address belonged to Hayes Residential Holdings, LLC, at a rented mailbox in Edina. The state business filing listed Evan as chief executive and Marissa as registered agent. The company had been formed in August, 1 month before my alleged signature. There is more, Priya said. Voss's counsel emailed me the full option after I told him there is a forgery claim. Your signature page is notarized by a Daria Klein. I did not know the name. The acknowledgement says she personally witnessed you sign and verified your driver's license, Priya continued. I'm sending a preservation letter to her and Voss today. We will also seek a temporary restraining order preventing any closing or further representation of authority. Can they remove the record? Voss can release it voluntarily. Given the deposit, I doubt he will until a court orders him or his counsel becomes convinced he was defrauded. Ruth had been unusually silent. Now she opened her handbag and removed a folded sheet of paper. Does this belong with your list? She asked. The letter used a logo I had never seen, a line drawing of Linden Court stone lions above the words Hayes Residential Management. It informed Ruth that her rent would increase from $975 to $1,450 when her lease expired. It offered a voluntary early relocation payment of $2,000 if she left within 30 days. When did you get this? I asked. 3 weeks ago. Why didn't you show me? She looked embarrassed. Marissa came by afterward. She said you had finally accepted that the building needed professional management, but you felt guilty speaking to longtime tenants. She asked me not to upset you. Did you sign anything? No. I told her I would speak to you. Then June's anniversary came up, and you seemed tired, and I thought perhaps you really were trying to avoid the conversation. Priya held out her hand for the letter. May I scan this? Ruth nodded. I felt a pressure behind my ribs that had nothing to do with age. Marissa had not merely used an empty apartment. She had stepped into the trust between me and people who had lived under my roof for decades. She had borrowed my supposed discomfort to make silence look compassionate. We knocked on doors. Luis Ortega in 2A had received a similar letter. His increase was nearly 40%. Marie Collins in 4B had been told that her new lease contained a redevelopment cancellation clause, though it did not. Daniel Cho said Evan had entered his apartment 2 weeks earlier with a contractor and measured the kitchen without giving notice. He said you asked him to inspect upgrade options, Daniel told me. I had not. Tanya Wells in 3B showed us text messages from Marissa offering $1,000 if Tanya could leave by March. Tanya was a public defender and had replied with 3 paragraphs about Minnesota landlord law. Marissa had not contacted her again. The Ortega's hot water had failed twice in the previous month. I had blamed an air pocket in the riser and replaced a valve. Luis now told me Evan had been in the basement both mornings before the failures. He said he was helping you, Luis said. By 11:30, Priya had a folder full of false notices and tenant statements. I had something harder to measure. The understanding that my family had been operating an imitation of me inside my own building. They used a logo with my lions. They used a company with my name. They used phrases like family property and Walter is tired. Every deception depended on people believing that Evan would not lie about his father. At noon, there was no accounting. Instead, a police cruiser pulled into the alley. 2 officers came to my door. Marissa stood behind them with a hand pressed dramatically to her chest. Mr. Hayes? The older officer asked. We received a report about an unlawful entry into an occupied apartment and removal of business property. I entered 4A yesterday, I said. I own the building. I removed nothing. Marissa interrupted. He has no operational authority over that unit. It is managed by our company under a signed agreement. Priya stepped forward and handed the officer her card. I represent Mr. Hayes and the Hayes Family Preservation Trust, the titled owner. The alleged management authority is disputed, and we have evidence of forgery. Here is the county ownership record. Here is written confirmation from the occupant that nothing was removed. The officer looked through the papers, then at Marissa. This appears civil, he said. He frightened our client, Marissa replied. Your client emailed me this morning, I said. He said you told him I was the maintenance host. Her eyes flashed. The younger officer asked whether there were any weapons in the building. The question embarrassed me until I realized why he had to ask. We said no. He advised everyone not to enter disputed spaces without counsel, and not to contact the paying guest except in writing. Before leaving, the older officer turned to Marissa. Do not use police to gain leverage in a property dispute. If you believe a crime occurred, provide accurate ownership information with the report. Her face tightened. When the cruiser left, she remained on the front steps. You brought a lawyer into our home, she said. My home, I answered. The one you called police to protect from me. You're enjoying this. No, that was the truth. There was no pleasure in watching the mother of my grandson choose another lie because the first ones had stopped holding. You and Evan received free use of 3A under a temporary family arrangement, Priya said. Given the circumstances, Mr. Hayes is terminating that arrangement. Formal written notice will follow. Until then, you must not access any other unit, basement, office, mail, tenant records, or building systems. Marissa looked at me. You're evicting your son. I'm ending free housing for 2 adults who forged authority over my property. You have no proof I forged anything. Then the records will protect you. She went upstairs without another word. That afternoon, Priya and I visited 4A with Paul's written consent. Paul joined by video from the hospital where he was demonstrating surgical equipment. We inventoried everything. In a desk drawer, we found 12 more keycards and a stack of North Star welcome packets. The binder listed 3 other properties, 2 condos in Minneapolis and a lake house near Stillwater. I did not own those. We photographed the list and left it for counsel to investigate. Behind the welcome packets was a thin blue folder labeled Linden Court Transition. Inside was a floor-by-floor renovation schedule. Units were classified as vacant, natural attrition, or managed exit. Ruth's apartment was marked managed exit. So were the Ortegas. The notes beside 2 read, pressure via service reliability school relocation incentive. I read the line twice. Service reliability. The hot water failures had not been accidents. Beside 1A, my apartment, someone had written, life tenancy if necessary, care narrative may accelerate. What does that mean? I asked. Priya's mouth became a straight line. It means we make copies before anyone realizes this folder is here. We scanned every page in place. We did not remove the original. At 4, Priya obtained access to the building's rear door camera account. I had installed 2 cameras the previous year after a package theft, but Evan had offered to configure the cloud storage. I knew how to view live footage on my phone. I had never learned how to search the archive. Evan had created the administrator account under his email. That fact alone did not make the footage inaccessible. The installer helped us verify the serial number, transfer ownership, and preserve the existing archive. It showed a pattern. Guests with rolling suitcases entering through the alley, cleaning crews carrying gray totes, furniture deliveries, and Evan repeatedly using the basement utility door after midnight. The video had no view inside private units and no audio. It did not need either. On January 12th at 11:43 p.m., Evan entered the boiler room. 7 minutes later, he left. The next morning, Luis Ortega reported no hot water. On January 19th, the same sequence occurred. I found the old valve in my maintenance scrap bin. When I had replaced it, I thought mineral buildup had caused the stem to slip. Looking now, I saw fresh tool marks on the packing nut. I sat on an overturned bucket. Priya waited. I taught him how to use that wrench, I said. When Evan was 12, he had followed me through the building with a red toolbox. He could bleed a radiator before most boys his age could make scrambled eggs. He complained, but he also liked knowing things his friends did not. At 16, he worked a full summer repainting window frames to earn money for his first car. I had believed those days gave him ownership in the honorable sense, a history, a belonging, a reason to protect the place. Perhaps he had heard something else. Perhaps every Saturday with a paint scraper became an unpaid installment in his mind. At 5:20, Graham Voss's lawyer sent Priya an email. Voss Urban would not release the recorded option. The company maintained that it had acted in good faith and reserved all rights against the trust, Hayes, residential holdings, and the individuals involved. However, it agreed to postpone closing for 10 business days while signatures were investigated. 10 days? I asked. It's an opening position, Priya said. We're filing Monday. What about the deposit? Voss wired it to the LLC account. If more than $100,000 has been spent, he will fight everyone to recover it, including me. He may try. Good faith does not convert a forgery into authority, but litigation is how companies ask expensive questions. My insurance agent called next. North Star's short-term rental had not been disclosed. If Fora continued operating, my liability coverage could be jeopardized. The city required a license for furnished stays under 30 days. Paul's 6-week term fell outside one category, but other booking records might not. Fire inspections, lodging taxes, and occupancy rules all depended on facts we did not yet have. Every answer opened another door. By evening, I was more tired than I had been after any physical day of work. I changed the access code to the basement office, notified all tenants in writing that only I and a licensed management company I had just retained could issue notices, and arranged for a locksmith to recce the vacant unit cylinder after Paul's departure. I did not lock Evan's family out of 3A. Their notice period had begun, and law mattered most when anger made shortcuts tempting. At 7, someone knocked softly. It was Marissa. She carried the gray tote of dirty linens. For one absurd moment, I thought she was going to repeat her order. Instead, she set the tote inside my door. Paul checks out tomorrow, she said. These need to be ready for the next guest Monday. I looked at her. There will be no next guest. We have a contract. You have a problem. People are depending on us. People you invited into an apartment you do not control. Her composure finally cracked. Do you know what it feels like to be 40 and ask your father-in-law for a place to live? Do you know what people say when your business fails? They smile and ask what's next, but what they mean is, what is wrong with you? We found a way to turn this around. We made one empty apartment earn more in 6 weeks than Ruth pays in 7 months, and you call that betrayal. You forged a sale. We accelerated a decision you were already going to make. I was not going to make it. Then you would have died here and left Evan to untangle a sentimental museum. The cruelty was almost casual. That made it honest. Did you sign my name? I asked again. She lifted her chin. You'll have to prove whatever story you've decided to tell. And the hot water? For the first time, she looked uncertain. What hot water? You should ask Evan. She stared at me, picked up the tote, and walked back into the hall. Marissa, I said. She turned. June would have helped us, she said. June would have fed you, I answered. Then she would have changed the locks. I closed the door. That night, I did not cook. I ate half a cinnamon roll over the sink and listened to footsteps pass above my ceiling. At 2 a.m, the fire alarm began to scream. I was out of bed before I was fully awake. In the hallway, doors opened and tenants emerged in coats, slippers, and pajamas. Smoke drifted down the stairwell from the 4th floor. I called 911 and went up with the extinguisher, staying low. The smoke came from 4A. Paul had checked into a hotel after our conversation, so the apartment should have been empty. The door stood open. A metal wastebasket burned near the desk. Papers curled black inside it. Flames had climbed one curtain. I discharged the extinguisher until the room filled with white powder and the fire collapsed. Firefighters arrived minutes later. They cleared the building, ventilated the unit, and checked the walls with a thermal camera. No one was injured. The damage was limited to the wastebasket, curtain, carpet, and smoke staining. The original blue transition folder was gone. At 2:07 a.m., while we stood in the courtyard under falling snow, Priya called the fire investigator and told him we had scanned documents from that desk hours earlier. At 2:19, the rear camera archive showed Evan entering the building through the alley at 1:37, carrying nothing. It showed him leaving at 1:52 with a dark folder tucked beneath his coat. The fire alarm sounded at 1:58. I watched the footage on my phone while my son stood across the courtyard beside Marissa and Noah. Evan saw my face and knew. For a few seconds, neither of us moved. Then he came toward me. It wasn't supposed to catch the curtain, he said. Marissa made a sound behind him. The investigator turned. I remember the snow melting on Evan's hair. I remember Noah's bare ankles above his borrowed boots. I remember wanting, with a force that hurt, to go back 24 hours and be angry only about laundry. What did you burn? The investigator asked. Evan looked at me, not at him. Just drafts, he said. Things that could be misunderstood. Where is the folder? I panicked. The investigator repeated the question. Evan pointed toward the alley. He had put the blue folder in the dumpster behind the building. Firefighters retrieved it from beneath 2 trash bags. Several pages were missing. The rest were damp but readable. The investigator asked Evan to step away from the family and speak with him. Noah began to shake. I wrapped my coat around my grandson and turned him so he did not have to watch his father being placed in the back of a police cruiser. That was the moment the matter stopped being a disputed transaction. It became exactly what I had warned them it could become when Marissa asked, "Or what?" And once it crossed that line, none of us could move it back by calling it family. The police did not arrest Evan that night. They questioned him, photographed his coat, took the folder as evidence, and released him pending review by the county attorney. The fire investigator called the incident suspicious but limited. Because the alarm had activated quickly and the building was occupied, the possibility of criminal charges was real, even though Evan insisted he had intended only to burn several pages in the metal bin. Intent, I learned, does not make smoke less dangerous to people sleeping above it. Marissa asked me to keep Noah until morning. She did not phrase it as an order. She looked stunned, almost fragile, and for a moment I saw the young woman Evan had brought home 16 years earlier, the one who laughed too loudly when nervous and wrote thank you notes after every meal. "I need to go to the station," she said. "He shouldn't see more of this. I'll keep him. Don't turn him against us. I won't lie to him. That is the only promise I can make." She flinched, then walked away. The tenants returned to their apartments around 4. The fire department posted 4A against occupancy until repairs and inspection. Paul's company moved him to a hotel and demanded a full refund from North Star. At dawn, I made coffee for the firefighters who finished their report. Habit survived, even when trust did not. Noah slept in my bed. I sat in the kitchen and watched snow cover the tracks in the courtyard. At 8, Ruth came through the connecting hall, carrying eggs and a frying pan. "You look terrible," she said. "Thank you." June would say the same. She cooked while I called my insurance carrier, the restoration company, and Priya. I had spent a lifetime responding to building emergencies in the correct order: people, utilities, structure, documentation. This emergency had a different center, but the sequence still helped. Noah appeared around 9. He sat at the table without speaking. Ruth put scrambled eggs in front of him. "Your grandfather once flooded the first floor trying to repair a pipe without turning off the main," she said. I looked at her. "That is not accurate. Water came through my light fixture. The shutoff failed. Because he had not tested it in 6 years." Noah gave the smallest smile. Ruth continued telling the story until he ate half the eggs. She understood that ordinary embarrassment can be a gift when a child's family has become extraordinary in the worst way. Marissa arrived at 10. She looked at Noah. "Pack your things. We're staying with Aunt Jenna." He looked at me. "Go with your mother," I said. "Call me whenever you want. Can I come back for hockey gear?" "Your gear is upstairs. Dad moved it to the basement storage cage last week." Marissa closed her eyes. "He'll get it," I said. The storage cages were assigned to apartments and secured by padlocks. The cage for 3A contained hockey bags, holiday decorations, and 6 cardboard file boxes bearing the North Star logo. Priya had warned me not to search their belongings. I removed only Noah's gear while Marissa watched. One box had split at the bottom. Through the gap, I could see stacks of printed booking confirmations. I photographed the boxes from outside the cage and did not touch them. "How many rentals?" I asked. Marissa's voice was flat. "Not here." "How many in my building?" "1 unit. Different guests." "How many guests?" 6 bookings since December. "The first booking was before you formed North Star." She looked sharply at me. I had guessed, but her reaction answered. "Did Evan know from the beginning?" "Evan knew we needed revenue." "Did he know you forged my signature?" "You keep saying that as if repetition makes it true." Noah stood 10 feet away holding his skates. I lowered my voice. "Take care of him. I always have." She led Noah toward the car. Before getting in, he ran back and hugged me hard enough to press my keys into my leg. "You're not going to sell, right?" he whispered. "No." That was the first promise I had made in 2 days without reservation. On Monday morning, Priya and I entered a courtroom that smelled faintly of wet wool. Voss Urban sent 2 lawyers. Evan and Marissa had separate counsel by then. Daria Kleane, the notary, did not appear, though Priya had served notice on her. The judge reviewed the trust deed, the false option, my Duluth evidence, and affidavits from Ruth and Paul. Ruth's phone had preserved a photograph from September 14th showing us at June's grave at 2:06 in the afternoon. A restaurant receipt put us in Hinckley at 6:31. My vehicle's electronic toll record showed us returning to the Twin Cities after 8. The notarial acknowledgement claimed I appeared before Daria Klein in Edina at 4:15. The judge granted a temporary restraining order. No sale, assignment, new tenancy, transfer, or representation of authority could occur without court approval. Hayes Residential Holdings had to preserve its records and provide an accounting. Voss Urban was prohibited from enforcing the option pending an evidentiary hearing. The order did not declare us victorious. It gave the truth time to arrive without the building disappearing first. Outside the courtroom, Graham Voss approached me. "We should speak," he said. Priya answered before I could. "Through counsel. I'm not threatening him." "Then you will not mind witnesses." Voss looked older than he had at dinner. He said his company had spent months assembling a development plan. The location was essential to a larger block project. He had relied on Evan's industry reputation, a title summary, and a notarized agreement. He claimed he had no knowledge of false tenant notices or short-term rentals. "Release the option," I said. "Return our deposit." "I never received it." "Your family did." "My family also forged my signature. That does not make me their bank." He studied me. 4.8 was generous. Given the current situation, I might authorize 4.5 with a direct credit for the missing funds. You would still walk away wealthy. You heard the judge. I heard a temporary order. Litigation could last 2 years. The building needs capital. Tenants will become nervous. Insurance will ask questions. I'm offering a clean end. For the first time, I understood Voss clearly. He may not have created the fraud, but he could see my pain and calculate its discount. "At my table," I said. "You asked where I would go because you believed I was already the former owner. You never asked what happened to the people upstairs. This is business. That is what people say when they want decency excluded from the arithmetic." Priya touched my elbow, and we walked away. The accounting arrived 3 days later. It was incomplete, but incomplete records can speak loudly. Voss Urban's deposit entered the Hayes Residential Holdings account on November 18th. The same week, $82,000 paid off credit cards, a vehicle loan, and business debts belonging to Evan and Marissa. $18,000 went to furnishings and booking software. $9,000 paid a consultant connected to Glenn Sutter, the broker. $1,200 went to Daria Klein with the memo document services. Another $7,000 moved to North Star executive stays. Only $201,000 remained, less than Evan had claimed. North Star had collected $37,400 from 6-4A bookings. It paid no rent to the trust and no utility reimbursement. Some guests had stayed as few as 9 nights. The city licensing issue was no longer theoretical. The management agreement supposedly authorizing North Star also carried my signature. Its date was August 22nd. No notary appeared on that one. The signature was a digital image, identical in every pixel to a signature I had placed on a 2020 property insurance form. June had been alive when I signed the original. I remembered her leaning over the table and telling me the W looked like 2 V's arguing. Priya's document examiner found the same scanning artifacts in both versions. "This is not a similar signature," he explained. "It is the same image copied from one file into another." We knew where Evan kept old insurance records. 4 years earlier, while helping me digitize the office after June's death, he had scanned the 2020 form. That knowledge hurt more than I expected. He had performed the work as a kindness. I had thanked him. Daria Klein contacted Priya through a lawyer the following Friday. She wanted to cooperate. Her story changed twice in the first 20 minutes. First, she said she had witnessed me sign by remote video. Minnesota authorized remote online notarization under specific requirements, but Daria had not used an approved platform, retained a recording, or indicated a remote act on the certificate. Then she said Marissa brought the signed page and a copy of my driver's license. Daria had questioned it. Marissa told her I was grieving, distrustful of technology, and unwilling to meet strangers, but had already consented. Evan called during the appointment and confirmed that his father wanted the transaction completed. "Did Evan say he saw me sign?" I asked. Daria looked at her lawyer. He said, "Dad signed. I was there when he agreed." Not quite the same sentence. Close enough for people who wanted it to be. Daria admitted she backdated the certificate to September 14th because Marissa said the buyer's lender required the option date and notarization to match. The actual notarization occurred October 3rd. Daria's journal contained no signature from me. She had accepted $1,200 for a package of document services that normally would have cost less than $200. "Who put the signature on the page?" Priya asked. Daria said it was already there. The question returned to Evan and Marissa. Discovery answered it. Under the court's preservation order, their lawyers produced cloud files from Marissa's design account. One file was titled 1_sig_clean. Another was a draft signature page with my copied signature positioned too high, then a second draft with it moved down. The file history showed Marissa's user account making both edits on September 11th. Evan had not pasted the signature. He had signed as witness 3 days later and incorporated Hayes Residential Holdings a month earlier. He had introduced Voss, negotiated price, accepted the deposit, and spent part of it. Whether he watched Marissa construct the page no longer mattered to my understanding of his role. When Priya showed me the file history, I felt no triumph. I thought of Marissa standing in my kitchen saying, "You'll have to prove whatever story you've decided to tell." Proof did not feel like revenge. It felt like turning on the basement light and finding that the leak behind the wall was worse than the stain. Meanwhile, Linden Court still had to function. The fire restoration cost $14,000 before insurance. The carrier reserved rights because of the unauthorized rental, but agreed to cover most structural cleaning after investigation. The city cited North Star for unlicensed short-term lodging and cited the property for one disabled smoke detector in 4A. Someone had wrapped it in a plastic shower cap, probably to prevent cooking steam from triggering it. No one admitted doing so. I paid for every smoke detector in the building to be replaced with monitored units. I hired Lakeside Residential Services to handle rent collection, notices, and maintenance calls for 6 months. The fee offended my frugal instincts. Priya reminded me that independent records protected both the tenants and me. Then I held a tenant meeting in the basement community room. All occupied units came. Ruth sat in front with a legal pad. Luis and Ana Ortega brought their daughter Sofia. Daniel arrived in blue scrubs. Marie brought a thermos large enough for a camping trip. Tanya, the public defender, sat with her arms folded and the expression of someone prepared to ask difficult questions. I told them the truth. I said I had not authorized the rent increases, relocation offers, entries, or sale. I described the court order without disclosing private details about Noah. I apologized for failing to notice that my name was being used against them. You did not send the letters, Ana Ortega said. No. But I created the opening. I gave family members access and authority, people reasonably connected with me. I did not check what they did with it. Tanya asked whether any leases would change. No, I said. Existing leases will be honored. Future increases will follow the law and actual building costs. You will receive notices only through Lakeside or from me in a signed paper copy. If anyone says I am too upset, too confused, or too private to speak for myself, call me. Ruth raised a hand. What about the sale? There will be no sale to Voss Urban. The room released a breath. Afterward, Luis waited while others left. Mr. Hayes, I should have told you about Evan in the boiler room, he said. I did not want trouble for your family. Neither did I. That is how trouble got time. He was right. For years, I had thought keeping peace meant absorbing discomfort before it spread. June had been better at distinguishing peace from silence. She would tolerate clumsy apologies, bad moods, and mistakes made from fear. She had no patience for secrecy that required another person to doubt his own eyes. One Sunday after church, I found an old note in her recipe box. It was not a hidden warning or legal revelation. It was a grocery list written on the back of a rent schedule. At the bottom, she had scribbled, "Ask Walter about Evan's summer job. Don't solve it before they talk." Evan had been 20 then and wanted an internship in Chicago. I had arranged a maintenance position for him at Linden Court without asking. June made me withdraw the offer and listen. He went to Chicago. The internship led to his development career. I sat with the grocery list for half an hour. Had I solved too much for him later? The tuition shortfall, the wedding overage, the down payment loan I quietly forgave, the apartment after his job disappeared. Help had always felt cleaner than questions. Perhaps Evan learned that consequences were temporary weather and his father was the building he could enter when the storm came. Understanding that did not excuse him. It told me what I had to stop doing. Evan called 12 days after the fire. "Can we meet without lawyers?" he asked, for a personal conversation, not to discuss settlement terms. Fine. We met at a diner halfway between St. Paul and Jenna's house in Edina. He had moved into a weekly hotel. Marissa and Noah were still with her sister. His employer had placed him on leave after Voss Urban made a claim against him. He looked thin and unshaven. I hated seeing him that way. A parent does not stop registering a child's hunger because the child has become capable of causing harm. "How is Noah?" I asked. Angry. Mostly at me. He is frightened. "Marissa says you've been calling him every night." "He calls me." Same difference. "No, it is not." The waitress brought coffee. Evan turned the mug slowly. "I didn't know she used the signature image," he said. "You knew I had not signed. I knew you had agreed in principle. I did not. You said you were tired of midnight maintenance calls. You said maybe it was time to simplify. Selling one day is not permission to fabricate a contract today. We had Voss. Do you understand how rare that was? He wanted the whole corner. If we waited 6 months, financing might disappear. Marissa said if we created momentum, you would see the logic." Momentum, yes. Is that what you call telling Ruth I wanted her gone? Turning off hot water? Calling police when I entered 4A? He stared into the coffee. "The water was me," he said. "I already knew, but hearing it changed the shape of the hurt." "Why?" Voss's model needed at least 5 units delivered vacant in the first phase. We couldn't force people out. Marissa said small maintenance frustrations would make the relocation offers more attractive. People could have been burned. I shut the valve for a few hours. I knew exactly what I was doing. "You knew how to do it. That is not the same thing." He looked up. "You taught me every system in that place and then acted like none of it belonged to me. Every weekend, every summer, every emergency. I worked, too. But when it mattered, I was still the boy holding your flashlight. There it was. Not an excuse. A wound he had turned into permission. You should have told me you felt that way. Would you have listened? I'm listening now. Now I might go to jail. That is why now is too late to prevent consequences. It is not too late to tell the truth. He leaned back. Will you ask the prosecutor not to charge me? I looked at the man across from me and saw 3 versions at once. My son at 12 with the red toolbox, the witness who signed a lie, and the father whose boy no longer trusted him. I will tell the prosecutor the complete truth, I said. I will not ask for revenge. I will not ask him to protect you from facts. So that's it? No. That is the beginning of what accountability looks like. He laughed once, bitterly. You sound like Mom. I wish I had listened to her sooner. He left money for the coffee and walked out. I remained in the booth until the waitress asked whether I wanted anything else. I wanted my son to turn around, come back, and say he understood. Instead, I ordered pie. Some grief cannot be repaired in the moment. It can only be prevented from making the next decision. Marissa requested her own meeting the following week. Unlike Evan, she wanted lawyers present. We sat in Priya's conference room overlooking a parking ramp. Marissa wore a black suit and carried no leather folder. Her attorney, a patient man named Lowell, began by saying everyone shared an interest in minimizing harm to a minor child. Priya replied that no one had proposed involving Noah in the civil claims. Lowell placed a settlement outline on the table. Under their proposal, I would ratify the Voss option at a revised price of $4,600,000. Voss would credit the missing portion of its deposit against the balance. Evan and Marissa would waive any future beneficial interest in Linden Court, repay the trust for a revenue over 5 years, and move out immediately. In exchange, I would release civil claims against them and provide a letter asking law enforcement to treat the matter as a private family dispute. No, I said. Lowell had not finished. Mr. Hayes, you should understand the practical benefits before. I understand them. No. Marissa leaned forward. You would receive more than $4 million after costs. The tenants would lose their homes. Voss has offered relocation packages. After you created reasons for them to leave. We made mistakes. A mistake is sending one letter to the wrong apartment. You built a company, copied my signature, accepted a deposit, rented my unit, pressured tenants, and called police on me. Those are decisions. Her attorney murmured something, but Marissa raised a hand. Do you want us ruined? She asked. No. Then what do you want? The question sounded genuine. I want the option released. I want every unauthorized booking refunded or honored somewhere else. I want the trust repaid. I want you and Evan to admit in writing that you had no authority, so no tenant or business is left wondering. I want the criminal process left to people whose job it is to decide. And I want Noah to hear from both of you that none of this was his fault. You want confession. I want accuracy. She looked out the window. I did not think of it as stealing, she said. Priya glanced at me but did not interrupt. Marissa said the idea began with 4A. She had seen furnished medical stays earning 4 times the ordinary rent. She believed one successful unit would persuade me to expand. Evan said I would object before I understood, so they furnished it first. When bookings came in, they used the revenue to cover their bills. Glenn Sutter visited the unit and told them Voss wanted the block. Evan believed the building was worth less than $5 million. Voss offered nearly that. Marissa prepared a presentation. Evan delayed showing me. He was afraid you would say no because the idea came from him, she said. So you removed the question. We made the decision concrete. We thought once you saw the money. Why copy my signature? She pressed her lips together. Voss gave us 48 hours to secure the option. Evan said you had promised him the property. He signed as witness. I believed we were documenting an agreement that already existed within the family. Did I ever agree to $4.8 million? Not in those words. Did I agree to empty the building? You refused to talk about succession. Every conversation ended with another story about June or a tenant. That means no. She looked directly at me then. You liked having us dependent on you. The accusation did not surprise me this time. I considered it. Perhaps part of me liked being needed, I said. That is something I have to examine. It did not authorize you to use me. For a moment, her certainty wavered. Then she returned to the practical. Without the sale, they could not replace the spent deposit. Voss would sue. Her business reputation was gone. Evan's career was likely over. Noah might have to change schools. All of that was terrible. None of it made the proposed sale right. You placed those costs on the table before I entered the room, I said. You cannot call me cruel because I refused to pay them with someone else's home. The meeting ended without agreement. Voss Urban pressed forward with its civil case. Its lawyers argued that even if the signature was unauthorized, my conduct had created apparent authority. I had allowed Evan to help with building technology, referred to the property as ours in family conversation, and let him deal with contractors. I had not objected to North Star until after Voss paid the deposit. That final point had a simple answer. I had not known North Star existed. The others were harder because they contained pieces of ordinary family life. I had said, our building. I had asked Evan to speak with a roofer once. I had let him configure cameras and fix a circulation pump. Trust leaves evidence that looks inconvenient after betrayal. Priya did not try to pretend otherwise. Apparent authority depends on what the owner manifested to the third party, she explained. Not merely what Evan said about himself. What did you communicate directly to Voss? Nothing before dinner. Exactly. Discovery showed Voss had never emailed or called me. Every message went through Evan, Marissa, or Glenn. The title commitment identified the Hayes Family Preservation Trust and me as trustee. Voss's acquisition checklist contained an unchecked line, Trustee Authority Direct Confirmation. Someone had typed beside it, Family Sensitive, EH Handling. That note mattered. So did an email from Glenn Sutter to Voss's acquisition director 2 weeks before the deposit. Old man has not joined a call. Son says grief/memory make direct contact unproductive. Recommend tying up site now and curing paperwork before close. Voss had not necessarily known the signature was false, but its own records showed it recognized the absence of direct confirmation and proceeded because the location was valuable. At the evidentiary hearing in April, the courtroom benches filled with more people than I expected. Ruth came. So did Luis, Tanya, Daniel, and Marie. Paul Mercer flew in because his employer's legal department wanted the fraudulent booking documented. Noah did not attend. I was grateful. Daria Klein testified first. She admitted I never appeared before her. Under questioning, she said Marissa assured her that the family was aligned, and Evan confirmed my consent. Daria's notary commission had been suspended pending investigation. The document examiner demonstrated how the signature image moved from the insurance form into the management agreement and then into drafts of the option page. He enlarged a tiny dust mark that appeared in the same place beside the H on each copy. Marissa's lawyer objected that file access did not prove who operated the account. The judge allowed the evidence and reserved weight. Then Evan testified. He wore a gray suit I had bought him for June's funeral. He looked straight ahead when he swore to tell the truth. Voss's lawyer asked whether I had promised him Linden Court. My parents told me it would pass to me, he said. Did your father express a desire to stop managing it? Many times. Did he ask you to explore options? Evan hesitated. He asked what the property might be worth. That was true. 2 years earlier, I had asked over breakfast whether values on our street were as high as newspapers claimed. Did you believe you were acting for the family's benefit? Yes. Priya stood for cross-examination. Mr. Hayes, did your father give you written authority to sell the trust property? No. Did he give you written authority to operate short-term lodging? No. Did he tell you to form Hayes Residential Holdings? No. Did you personally see him sign the purchase option? Evan looked toward me. No. Yet you signed a line stating you witnessed his signature. Yes. When Voss Urban transferred $320,000, did you tell Voss that you had not witnessed the signature? No. Did you use part of the money to pay your personal debts? Yes. Did you shut off hot water to apartment 2A to encourage the Ortega family to accept relocation? His lawyer objected on relevance. The judge allowed a limited answer because vacancy was a term of the option. Evan's voice dropped. Yes. Did your father authorize that? No. Did you enter 4A after your father discovered the transition plan? Yes. Did you attempt to burn documents? His lawyer objected because criminal charges were possible. Evan invoked his right not to answer. Priya returned to the table. I wanted to feel relieved that the truth was finally simple enough for strangers to record. Instead, I watched my son leave the witness stand and thought about the first time he learned an oath. He had been 8, called as a pretend witness during a school field trip to the county courthouse. He raised his hand and looked at me proudly from the jury box. Marissa did not testify. I did. Voss's lawyer asked about every time I used the phrase family building. He asked whether Evan had performed maintenance, whether I intended him to inherit, whether I had complained about age, snow, repairs, or tenants calling after dark. Yes, I said when the facts were yes. Then he asked, "Isn't it true that you changed your mind only after learning the transaction required tenants to relocate?" No. You objected to the relocation terms at dinner. I objected to the entire document. But you had discussed selling before. Discussing rain does not authorize someone to sell your roof. The judge glanced over his glasses. Voss's lawyer tried again. Did you tell your son the building would be his? Someday, after my wife and I were gone, subject to the trust, yes. Why should Voss Urban bear the loss created by your family's internal misunderstanding? Because Voss paid people who did not own the property without speaking once to the person who did. You held those people out as family representatives. I held them out as my son and daughter-in-law. Those are relationships, not job titles. After closing arguments, the judge took the matter under advisement. We waited 9 days for the ruling. During those 9 days, ordinary life continued with almost offensive confidence. A kitchen faucet in 2B began leaking. Marie's cat escaped into the stairwell. Snow finally melted from the courtyard, revealing 3 mittens, a broken sled, and a North Star key card near the drain. I picked up the card and turned it over in my hand. It had no power anymore. We had changed every common area credential and Recid 4A. Still, I placed it in an evidence envelope for Priya. I had become a man who documented even powerless things. The ruling arrived on a Thursday morning. The court found no enforceable option against the trust. My signature was unauthorized. Evan and Marissa lacked actual authority, and Voss had not established apparent authority because no representation of that authority came from me. The recorded memorandum had to be discharged within 5 business days. The judge also found that Voss's claims for the deposit lay against Hayes Residential Holdings and the individuals who received the funds, not against Linden Court. $4,800,000 vanished from the future in one paragraph. I felt lighter for perhaps 10 seconds. Then I thought of Evan. Priya hugged me, which surprised both of us. Ruth cried. Louis shook my hand. Tanya said, "Good," with the stern satisfaction of a person who believed courts should occasionally do exactly what law promised. Graham Voss left through a side door. His company released the memorandum the next day. The frozen $201,000 was returned to Voss under an agreement preserving claims for the balance. North Star refunded 3 future bookings from a small reserve. Paul's employer recovered its money through a credit card dispute. That left $119,000 of the Voss deposit. Legal fees, fire damage, rental income, and city penalties. The numbers did not disappear because the building was safe. Voss sued Evan, Marissa, Hayes, Residential Holdings, Glenn, and Daria. The trust asserted its own claims. The prosecutor reviewed evidence from the fire investigator, the notary inquiry, and the financial records. By June, Marissa was charged with forgery and theft by swindle. Evan was charged with theft by swindle, attempted evidence tampering, and a fire-related count his lawyer said he would contest. Daria faced a notary violation and participation claim. Glenn insisted he had been misled, though his commission agreement told another story. News of the charges appeared in a short local article. It did not call me the former owner. It called me the 70-year-old trustee of a St. Paul apartment property. That should not have mattered. It did. Noah came to Linden Court the first Saturday after school ended. Marissa allowed it because her attorney had advised both parents not to interfere with stable family relationships. That was the legal explanation. The human one was that Noah missed home. He had grown half an inch. Children do that while adults are busy breaking things. We replaced 2 loose boards on the courtyard bench. He worked quietly, then asked whether his parents were bad people. I set down the drill. They did bad things. Serious things. That's not what I asked. I know. I searched for an answer honest enough for him and humble enough for me. People are more than the worst thing they do, I said. But being more does not erase what they did. Your parents have to decide what kind of people they become after this. Dad says you could make the charges go away. I cannot. I can tell the truth and say what outcome I believe is fair. Other people decide. Do you want him in jail? No. Then why don't you help? The question hurt because it came without manipulation. He genuinely did not understand the difference between help and rescue. Why would he? His father had learned the wrong version from me. If I lie, hide evidence, or pay every debt so your father feels no result from his choices, I am not helping him, I said. I am teaching him that the truth is optional when family is uncomfortable. Noah looked at the drill in his hands. It still feels like you're choosing the building. I'm choosing the people in it, including your father, though he may not believe that yet. We went back to the bench. Later, I showed him the new management portal and explained why no family member had administrator access. I also showed him the amended emergency list. His name was nowhere on it. Good, he said. I never wanted to be resident host. I laughed for the first time in weeks. That evening, he asked if we could make June's roast. For how many? I asked. Just us. Maybe Ruth. 3 people, then. And can we not dry it out? He smiled when he said it. I pointed the wooden spoon at him. You are close to losing kitchen privileges. Ruth came over at 7. Noah set the table. I cooked because I wanted to. That difference had once seemed too small to defend. Now it felt like the foundation under every other choice. The criminal cases moved more slowly than the seasons. Summer settled over Linden Court. The lilacs June planted along the alley bloomed so heavily that branches leaned against the fence. I spent 3 mornings cutting dead wood and tying the strongest stems away from the brick. Noah helped on Saturdays. He no longer asked whether I could stop the prosecution, but sometimes I caught him watching me as though an answer might have changed without being spoken. Evan and Marissa separated in July. I heard it first from Noah, then from Evan's lawyer. Marissa remained with Jenna. Evan rented a studio near his new job at a warehouse supply company. Each initially blamed the other. Marissa said Evan had represented my consent as certain. Evan said Marissa had turned a family assumption into documents. Their messages, however, showed both of them moving forward whenever the other hesitated. That is another thing truth does. It removes the comfort of a single villain. Marissa created the signature files. Evan signed as witness. Marissa wrote the tenant plan. Evan turned the valve. Marissa called police. Evan tried to burn the folder. They had taken turns crossing lines, then used the other person's earlier step as permission for the next. In August, a victim advocate asked me to prepare a statement for the prosecutor. She said I could describe financial losses, emotional harm, fear during the fire, and the effect on tenants. I drafted 12 angry pages. I wrote about Marissa's boots melting snow onto June's floor. I wrote every command she had given me. I wrote that Evan knew the building's systems because I trusted him. I wrote that a man who disables hot water and later starts a fire near a curtain has converted his father's teaching into a weapon. Then I put the pages in a drawer. Anger was true, but it was not the whole truth. A victim statement was not supposed to be a better disguise for revenge. I began again. I described the fear of hearing an alarm at 2 a.m. and counting doors in the snow. I described Ruth believing she had become unaffordable, the Ortegas worrying their daughter might have to change schools, Paul discovering he had paid a stranger for someone else's home, and Noah asking whether his parents were bad people. I listed the losses to the trust. I also wrote that neither Evan nor Marissa had a prior criminal record, that they had eventually produced records under court order, and that I did not seek the maximum possible punishment. My final paragraph was short. I do not ask the court to confuse mercy with erasure. I ask for a sentence that names what happened, protects the people harmed, requires restitution, and leaves room for 2 adults to become more honest than they were in my building. Please do not place restitution on funds reserved for my grandson's education. He received no benefit that he understood, and he owes no debt for his parents' choices. Priya read it and nodded. June? She asked. Some of her. Keep that version. Settlement discussions accelerated after the document examiner's report, and Evan's testimony became part of the civil record. Voss Urban did not want a trial exposing its unchecked due diligence. Its insurer wanted certainty. Daria wanted to avoid a conspiracy claim. The trust wanted repairs and fees paid without spending 2 more years in court. The final civil agreement took 32 pages to say what dinner had revealed in a sentence. Voss permanently disclaimed any interest in Linden Court. It recovered the frozen funds and accepted repayment of part of the remaining deposit through insurance, liquidated business assets, and restitution judgments against the people who had received it. Voss waived claims against me and the trust. In return, I released claims against Voss for clouding title, while preserving the tenants' independent rights regarding false relocation efforts. Glenn surrendered his commission and paid a confidential amount. Daria's insurer contributed to legal costs. North Star's furniture was sold, except for linens and basic household goods that had little resale value. The trust received compensation for utilities, repairs, unpaid use of 4A, and part of its attorney fees. I did not become richer. I became less damaged. The distinction mattered. The criminal pleas came in October. Marissa pleaded guilty to 1 felony forgery count and 1 theft-related count. Evan pleaded guilty to attempted theft by swindle and evidence tampering. The more serious fire charge was dismissed under an agreement requiring him to admit that he started the wastebasket fire knowingly and created a risk to an occupied building. That admission became part of the sentencing record. Both received stayed prison sentences, supervised probation, community service, and restitution. Marissa served 120 days on electronic home monitoring except for work and counseling. Evan served 60 days in the county work release program because the court treated the destruction of evidence in an occupied building as a separate danger. Neither could manage property or hold client funds during probation. Some people thought the sentences were too light. Others thought a father had gone too far by allowing charges at all. I stopped trying to manage opinions from people who had not stood in the snow. At sentencing, Evan spoke first. He did not look at me until the end. I told myself the building had already cost me enough, he said. I used childhood work, future inheritance, and my father's generosity as if they were credits in an account. When he did not make the decision I wanted, I decided delay was weakness and family meant permission. Then every lie required another one. I endangered tenants I have known since I was a boy. I endangered my son. I am sorry. There was no but. That was new. Marissa read from a page. Her voice shook when she described copying my signature. Walter let us live without rent when we had nowhere else to go, she said. I converted that kindness into a story that he was old-fashioned, incapable, and in the way. I treated his help as a service I could command. When he resisted, I used his age and grief to make other people doubt him. I cannot undo that. She turned toward me. I am sorry I made you prove ownership of your own life. I believed she understood the sentence in that moment. Whether she would live by it was work only she could do. After court, Noah hugged both parents in the hallway. Then he came to me. No one asked him to choose whom to stand beside. That may have been the first decent decision all 4 adults made together. Evan entered work release in November. I visited once. The room had plastic chairs bolted to the floor and vending machines that accepted only exact change. He wore his own clothes because he left each weekday for his warehouse job, but a paper wristband marked his status. We spoke about Noah's hockey team, the roof estimate at Linden Court, and nothing important for 15 minutes. Then he said, I thought you loved the building more than me. I have wondered whether I sometimes made it feel that way. He looked surprised. When you were young, I continued, I often let work decide what we did because work had an emergency attached. Boilers freeze now. Games happen again next week. That is how I justified it. You missed the championship when I was 13. The supply line broke in 3B. I know why. Knowing why did not put me in the bleachers. He stared at his hands. I used to think if the building became mine, it would prove all those Saturdays meant something. They meant you helped our family. They did not purchase the right to harm it. I know that now. Do you? He met my eyes. I am starting to. It was not reconciliation. It was not forgiveness. It was a conversation without a forged ending. I left before visiting hours ended because I no longer believed staying until someone felt better was the measure of love. At Linden Court, the future required its own paperwork. Priya and I reviewed the trust. June and I had named Evan as successor trustee because he was our son and understood real estate. I could not leave that provision unchanged. I also did not want to rewrite my estate in the hottest part of anger. We waited 6 months. Then I appointed a professional fiduciary as successor trustee and created a tenant advisory committee with notice rights over any future sale. I signed a preservation agreement with a local housing fund. In exchange for a low-interest loan for the roof, windows, and boiler controls, Linden Court would keep a portion of its units at moderate rents for 15 years. Existing leases gained relocation protections beyond the minimum law. The building would still pass value to my estate. Evan was not erased as my son or as a beneficiary, but he would never control Linden Court alone, and no future buyer could empty it through a conversation that excluded the people inside. When I told Evan, he was quiet. "So I lost it," he said. "You lost authority you had not yet received." Same result. "Not quite. You are still my son. You may still inherit part of what I leave. But the building is no longer a test of whether I love you. Was it before? Maybe for both of us." He did not thank me. I did not need him to. The renovation loan funded work the following spring. We replaced the old boiler controls with a monitored system that recorded every manual change. New locks created individual access logs without giving one master credential to a family member. We repaired 4A, removed the smoke odor, and restored the original oak trim Marissa's staging crew had covered with peel-and-stick panels. I rented 4A on a 12-month lease to a physical therapist named Camille Brooks, who worked at the same hospital where Paul had demonstrated equipment. Before she signed, she asked why the apartment had so many new smoke detectors. "Long story," I said. "Good ending?" "Accurate ending." She accepted that. Ruth remained in 1B, the Ortegas remained in 2A, and Sophia did not change schools. Daniel finished his lease, then moved closer to his hospital. Marie renewed. Tanya volunteered for the Tenant Advisory Committee and corrected 3 phrases in its bylaws before our first meeting. Lakeside continued managing the building after the original 6 months. At first, I told myself the fee was temporary. Then I noticed I slept through the night, attended Noah's Saturday games, and could travel without checking the boiler every hour from my phone. The professional management Marissa claimed I needed turned out not to be an insult. Taking it without consent had been the insult. Choice changes the meaning of help. In June, more than a year after the dinner, I drove to Duluth with Ruth and Noah. We visited June's grave. Noah placed lilacs beside the stone and told his grandmother, in the embarrassed voice teenagers use with the dead, that he had made varsity hockey for the coming winter. On the return drive, he asked if his father could come to Sunday dinner. Evan had completed work release and was 6 months into probation. He attended counseling, made regular restitution payments, and had not asked me for money. He and Marissa were finalizing their divorce. Noah divided time between them. "Has he asked you?" I said. "He thinks you'll say no. Then he needs to ask." Noah sighed. "Adults make everything hard. Sometimes we make it honest." 3 days later, Evan called. "Noah says you have dinner on Sundays." "Sometimes. Could I come?" I let the silence remain long enough to be real, not punitive. "This Sunday, 6:30. Should I bring anything?" "Bread." He arrived at 6:28 carrying 2 loaves and the red toolbox from his childhood. "I found this in storage," he said. The metal box was scratched, its latch bent, his name still written in June's black marker under the handle. "Keep it," I said. "I thought it belonged here." "It belongs to you. What you do with tools is your responsibility." He nodded and set it beside his chair. Ruth came. So did Luis and Anna, because Sunday dinner had gradually become less private than I expected. Tanya brought salad. Camille brought a pie. Noah moved between the kitchen and table, stealing roasted carrots. Evan stood near the stove. "Can I help?" he asked. "Not what needs doing. Not an assumption. A question." "Mash the potatoes," I said. He washed his hands. We did not discuss court, money, or inheritance that evening. We talked about the twins, Camille's impossible parking schedule, Sophia's science fair, and whether the west windows should be repaired or replaced. Evan listened when tenants spoke. Perhaps he was being careful because probation and shame had made him careful. Careful was still better than entitled. After everyone left, he helped carry plates into the kitchen. "Dad," he said, "I know coming to dinner doesn't fix anything. No, I'm not asking you to trust me with the building again. Good. I would like you to trust me with something someday. I looked at him. Start with showing up when you say you will. I can do that. Then do it. He left with the red toolbox. That became the shape of our relationship for a while. Small promises. A game at 4. Bread at 6:30. A call on Tuesday. No sweeping declaration that the past had been transformed. Trust returned in measurements too small to impress an investor. Marissa's relationship with me remained more distant. She wrote twice from home monitoring. The first letter explained too much. The second did not. It said she had begun working for a nonprofit event center under supervision and was repaying what she could. She thanked me for not attacking her relationship with Noah. She did not ask forgiveness. I replied that I hoped she would build a life that did not require anyone else to become smaller. I told her she could attend Noah's birthday dinner at a restaurant if he wanted both sides there. I did not invite her back to Linden Court. Boundaries are not the opposite of forgiveness. Sometimes they are the structure that prevents forgiveness from becoming another permission slip. Noah turned 16 that winter. He wanted dinner at an old Italian restaurant near his school, the kind with red booths, paper placemats, and waiters who sang badly on purpose. He asked for his mother, father, Ruth, and me to sit at one table. "You are sure?" I asked. "I'm tired of separate cakes." That was reason enough. Marissa arrived first. Her home monitoring had ended, though she remained on probation. She wore a simple blue sweater and carried a gift bag. When she saw me, she stood. Walter, Marissa. Neither of us pretended a hug was available. She reached into her handbag and placed 3 keys on the table. One was the old front door key, one belonged to 3A, and one was a Brassmaster key I had not known she still possessed. "I found these in a box at Jenna's," she said. "My lawyer confirmed I should return them directly." All the locks had been changed, but she understood that returning powerless keys still mattered. "Thank you," I said. "I should have given them back before you had to ask." "Yes," she accepted the answer. Evan arrived with Noah a few minutes later. The evening was awkward, but not disastrous. We ordered too much pasta. Ruth told an embarrassing story about Noah at age 4. Evan and Marissa discussed the school schedule without arguing. When the waiter placed a candle in Noah's dessert, my grandson closed his eyes for a long time before blowing it out. Outside afterward, Marissa asked if she could speak with me. We stood beneath the restaurant awning while wet snow collected along the curb. "Noah says you kept my second letter," she said. "I did. I meant what I wrote. I hope so." She looked toward the window where Noah was helping Ruth into her coat. "I used to think you judged me because I wasn't June," she said. "Every tenant had a June story. Every recipe was June's. Every choice about the building began with what June would have wanted. I felt like there was no way to belong unless I remade the place." I had never seen that clearly. June's memory warmed Linden Court for me, but another person might experience the same warmth as a locked room. "You may be right that I left too little space," I said, "but belonging is not ownership, and feeling excluded did not make deception necessary. I know." "Do you?" She looked at me. "I am starting to." The phrase was Evan's. Perhaps that was all either of them could honestly claim. "I don't expect to come back to the building," she said. "That is not possible now. Maybe someday? I won't promise that." Her face tightened, then relaxed. "All right." It was the first time I could remember Marissa receiving no from me without turning it into negotiation, insult, or delay. She went inside for Noah. I put the 3 keys in my pocket. They had no practical use, but they felt heavy. Forgiveness, I realized, was not a door someone else could order me to unlock. If it opened at all, it would open slowly, from my side, after enough honest knocks. The gray totes of North Star linens remained in the basement through the litigation. After the settlement released them, I called a transitional housing program June had supported. They needed sheets and towels for families moving into apartments. Noah and I washed every load. He looked at the navy-striped towels turning behind the glass. "Mom told you to do this," he said. "She told me to prepare them for paying guests in an apartment she took. And now? Now I choose to clean them for people who need them." He added detergent to the next washer. Still laundry. Different meaning. We folded the linens on the old basement table. Mine were not hotel corners. June had always said fitted sheets were proof that some objects resisted human dignity. The program collected 7 complete sets the next morning. I kept one navy-striped towel. It hangs beside the utility sink, not as a trophy, but as a reminder that exploitation often arrives dressed as a small favor. Carry this. Pick him up. Wash those. Cook dinner. None of the acts are shameful. Service can be love when it is offered freely and received with gratitude. The danger begins when someone decides your love is evidence that your time, labor, home, or future belongs to them. On the second anniversary of the dinner, 12 people gathered in my apartment. That number was Noah's joke. He invited one person from every occupied unit, plus Evan, Ruth, and me. He made invitations that said, dinner at 7, participation voluntary. I cooked June's roast. Evan brought bread and arrived early. Ruth made horseradish cream. Camille set the table. Louis carved the meat. Nobody was a resident host. Nobody was a former owner. Before we ate, Noah raised his water glass. To Grandpa, he said, who still owns the building and finally lets other people do some work. Everyone laughed, including me. Through the window, I could see snow beginning over the courtyard. The stone lions wore red scarves. Voices filled June's green kitchen, not with forced warmth arranged for a sale, but with the uneven sound of people who had chosen to be there. Dinner was ready at 7. This time, no one had ordered me to make it.